take on valuing girls and trees. We need both for the future. We need both to take care of the ecology. I'd like to introduce herself.
Of the Earthchild Institute and one of the conveners of the Millionth Circle. Before I get started, I just want to pick up from Jean on Wangari Maathai, because Wangari is an old friend. We worked together many years ago when she was a visiting professor at Yale, before she won the Nobel Prize, and she was already quite famous then, but she was much easier to spend time with, and she is an amazingly wonderful human being. And part of her story that she shared with me back 10 years ago was of being arrested, spending a lot of time in jail, in flooded cell, where she almost died. And in fact, it was Al Gore who pulled the political pressure to get her out of jail and save her. And I feel called to share this with you tonight because last night she looked quite thin. And I asked her how she was, and she asked for my prayers. And so I ask for all of our prayers for Wangari, because what struck me, and I just felt it down my spine when she told me that she wasn't feeling well last night, is how closely she is associated physically with the trees and the devastation that's happening right now on Mother Earth. So as we pray for the trees and to pray for Wangari.
I'd like to add one thing. I was in jail and could make a call. She called Bella Abzug, and the reason she could call Bella Abzug was because of either the second or the third World Conference on Women, that basically what happens is that you make friends. She had not been part of the CSW, she would not have made a connection with Bella Abzug and had her home phone number and could call Bella and say, I am in jail, help. And Bella called Al Gore.
Thank you for clarifying. And I guess I am a little bit of the girls part of the title of our event. The Earthchild Institute is a relatively young NGO, less than 10 years old, 8 or 9 years old, associated with the Department of Public Information here at the United Nations and also the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And our work is to advocate for the rights, needs, and capacities of children relating to the environment, most specifically water and climate change and reforestation efforts, and children's environmental health. So I want to tell you a couple of stories, quick stories. But before I do that, I just wanted to bring the linkages between the environment and children's health and the environmental degradation. And there's a publication that we have copies of in the back that you might be interested in that I wrote with Earthchild Institute. We wrote with the World Health Organization and the UN Environment Program on healthy environments for healthy children. And it's looking at things like biodiversity, climate change, deforestation, desertification, and other things like chemical pollutants and things on the health of children, and giving ideas and things that we can do to make a difference, simple. So if anyone is interested in this, I just wanted to just say that it's there and there are copies. So what Earthchild Institute does is we're devoted to empowering children and training and raising awareness of the adults who work with children. And again, to associate to what Jean has said, is that in the past few years, I worked for UNICEF for about 5 years, since founding Earthchild Institute. From 2004 to 2009, I worked for UNICEF. And I developed their climate change and children's human security issues relating to children, water, sanitation, hygiene, children's environmental health. So I've been really privileged to be in some of the remotest rural areas in the developing world and to talk to children and to see what's happening. And just specifically last year, I was in 3 countries where I found out from the children from young girls in the communities that the deforestation is directly linked to increasing domestic and community violence in their communities. So much so that in the Amazon region in Brazil, UNICEF is supporting a study looking at not just the deforestation, but in this one community where I was in the Amazon region in Brazil, we found out there were miles and miles of deforested area that were reforested with monoculture, for palm oil. And that was even worse, bringing, the company's doing a lot of good things, supporting the school and so forth, but the domestic violence is like on the rise. And the reason I think that this is because especially the indigenous people are so integrally linked to the forest, to the biodiversity, that their whole structure comes apart when we lose the trees. I was in Nicaragua in August. In Nicaragua, the deforestation is so rampant, the huge trunks full of trees. We took a 10-hour drive to a place where the indigenous live on the Principalco River. The conditions there are worse than West Africa. 2 hours flight away from Miami. The conditions for children are worse, and the trucks full of trees, ancient trees, we passed about 20 trucks in one day. I took pictures. It was just like Easter Island. What Jean is saying, it's only going to be, UNDP estimates that it will be less than 10 years that you would hear the last tree go down in Nicaragua unless we act quickly. It was the same thing in Togo. I was in Togo where children are drinking filthy water because, when we cut the trees, the water dries up and then there isn't any water to drink either. These children in one area in Togo, in northern Togo, they showed me how they're digging with their hands in a dry riverbed to find the water underneath. And that's what they fill up their bottles with. And there used to be trees there, and there used to be water there. So it's very real. Like what's happening with the environmental degradation and climate change is just so real. So what we're about is developing resources to help people to understand this. The Earthchild Institute was initially founded with a quote from The Little Prince that says, "It is only with the heart that one can see clearly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." And when I first started developing the initial lessons, I realized that the same letters that spell earth also spell heart. And that's really, what it's about. And people don't seem to realize that the life systems of Mother Earth and our life systems of each of us as humans, as trees, we look at this huge tree and we say, how beautiful. Then we look at ourselves in the mirror and we say, oh God, but this is a little too fat over here and maybe, this is crooked over here. But in the tree, it looks beautiful. And we started teaching that to young children and developing these things while at the same time nurturing trees. So when I came back from Cancun, the climate change conference in Cancun was very different this year, and we were able to, on the policy level, get the word children into the educational frameworks that the parties agreed to, which we were really, really thrilled about. And when I left Cancun, I realized that the only way Earthchild Institute's cornerstone program, which Jean supports, is called 2.2 billion. The power of one child plus one tree equals a sustainable future for all. The reason for that is that there are 2.2 billion people under the age of 18 on Earth today. If we plant one tree for each one, that's 2.2 billion trees. And if we plant 7, if each one plants 7, then you can offset net deforestation in a year. But we've been having a really hard time raising the money because what we've wanted to do is have a grassroots movement where people plant the one tree for $18. You get 1 million people at $18, you're almost there. You get 100 million people at $18, there you go. But we've been having trouble to get the tipping point. And when I came back from Cancun, I realized there's something now called REDD. When I've asked them, why are you cutting the trees? They get such a little amount of money for it. And they said, when you speak for the trees here, you get killed. Sure. Simple as that. When you speak for the tree, it's not just the trees getting killed. There was one indigenous leader in Brazil that he had a 24-hour guard stay all the time because there had been so many attempts on his life for speaking for the trees. It's a big business. So RED is about bringing big business together with it, and the money, and allowing them to cut certain things and to nurture enough trees that to the balance of the old forest and the new. Things that they're having trouble with is the saplings to get the years of age so that they're strong enough that they could be replanted, and a lot of them are dying. So we said, what about plant schools? In schools you have people to take care of them all the time. You could sell saplings to the forest, and then you would bring in money for the schools to be. So I got to meet. I asked him, what about it? So we've been talking to his opportunity to write a paper, which we're doing now. And Emily is part of our team here and working on the paper with us. And we're working with the universities and some other partners. They call it something called leakage mitigation. RED projects are 20 years old. A timeline, somebody who's 10 today is 30 by the end of the RED project. So they did in environmental education. These kids we had in Cancun have been negotiating all our lives, and we still don't have anything going on. So, so basically educate children in schools, and we protect at the same time. You won't have to negotiate in 10 or 20. The population will be on the same page, and everyone will agree. So that's really what we're trying to do. We under a publication that we wrote with the youth organizations, which is Take Action Now, and it's a guide for supporting the local action. We don't have too many of these, but it's on the website, so you can download it as a PDF. And we're working on biodiversity, and right after the commission is over, we have a Rio Plus 20 planning meeting immediately after that we'll be taking part on. It's 20 past the Earth Summit. Agenda 21 clearly call for all of this work. It's almost such little. I think little has mentioned status of women, what's happening to the environment is equally amazing. And you know, if it comes back to our mothers, if we could respect our mothers, we could throw trash on the ground because we would see the earth. We've been developing a lot of resources to help people to understand these things so much. And thank you so much to Jean for raising, to Nina and the Million Circle and all of you. So.